Arthur's Cook Publishers present The Book of Gabriel, The Revelation Stone by Chris Cook and Caroline Arthurs Cook. Read by Tange Finnegan, with music by Matt Brimmelcombe.
Chapter 8, The Royal Bloodline. Back streets back, alright, sang the girls as the coach drove into Kingston's town centre. Next stop, Cromwell Road bus station, where the local time is approaching 12:14 p.m. Please return your seats to the upright position and fold away any seat trays, Nancy announced over the microphone, mimicking a flight steward. All residents of Kingston and the surrounding areas, please alight here. We thank you for riding with us and wish you a safe onward journey. Emmett, Lionel and their passengers, following behind in a convoy, knew this drop-off was their cue to be dismissed, and they drove away. Amelia and all the girls jostled off the coach with laughter and merriment. Mrs. O'Brennan and Claude exchanged words of thanks before she too got off the bus. Nancy stepped off behind her, and the two women hugged. Nancy took the opportunity to whisper into her colleague's ear. It was a successful operation, Radhika, a job well done. Last night was such a close call, though. Mrs. O'Brennan was exhausted and feeling the mental strain of her mission. But we pulled through. Now get going, the others will take over from here. Nancy then turned and called to the girls. Please go and get some rest, and look after yourselves. Nancy waved and got back on the coach. Amelia and the other girls waved from the pavement as the coach drove away. It's kind of sad that we couldn't have stayed a few days more, Sophie said, clearly emotional. That trip was awesome, though, Alice responded, looking directly at Amelia. Yeah, who knew? Erin chuckled, hugging Amelia. Tell your mum she can make my birthday cake any time. The girls formed a team huddle on the pavement, and the rest of the girls called out, Group hug. Within a minute of driving off, Nancy opened her flip phone and dialed a number. Amelia's back on home turf, she said into the phone, still craning her head back at the girls. We just dropped her off at the bus station in Cromwell Road, along with the rest of the rowing team and O'Brennan. She's likely to take another bus home and then walk. Roger dat, I can see her right now, said the deep male voice on the other line, who had a strong Jamaican accent. Can you confirm if she's the Revelation Stone already? He asked. Affirmative, sir. We know Gabriel met her yesterday evening. Coleman and Page followed her up the mountain. Although they kept a safe distance, they confirmed that they were close enough proximity to see Amelia talking with someone, but they weren't able to ascertain who. As well as that, Amelia's mission has already begun in earnest. She must have had an experience with her stone last night, as she was the one who raised the alarm. The clerics who had followed Nemri up the mountain could neither see my glowing aura, nor could they see or hear any of my interaction with her. The Slemevoids were obviously convinced that something important took place last night, Nancy continued. They were determined in their attack, and we've been on level red since then. I think you guys have got your work cut out for you. Assuming all you say is true, I can only assume that this mean we'll be on level red for the foreseeable, added the male on the phone. Affirmative, replied Nancy. Claude and I are heading for Fort Sanctuarium, New Orleans. The others will head to Manley's HQ for debriefing. We trust you and your team will do well as always, she added, smiling. He could detect she was smiling and smiled back. Thank you, Nancy Lou. We'll certainly do our best, Garfield said before ending the call. Nancy snapped her flip phone shut, sighed, and rested her head back on the coach seat. Those guys sure have a hard task on their hands in the coming days. Mais oui, especially Garfield, as he is head of protection detail for Amelia, Claude agreed. But he is one of the best, he added. Both he and Nancy had come to highly respect Garfield. The sharp sound of a beeper went off from within Nancy's bag, and she quickly pulled out a 9x5-inch hardcover book, placed it on her lap, and opened it to reveal an electronic device that resembled a laptop. One side having the dark screen of a video monitor, and the other side being a keypad. She touched the screen with her right index finger. It instantly came on, revealing the familiar image of a rather distinguished-looking man in a dark suit with a neat and greying beard. It's a message from HQ. Nancy held it upright for Claude to see. This is a secure message for Claude and Nancy, said a well-spoken Englishman. I have a new mission for you both, he continued. Instead of heading to New Orleans, Louisiana, you are to be redirected to Rome, Italy. Claude and Nancy briefly glanced at each other but said nothing. Claude shook his head, slightly annoyed that they were being seconded somewhere else. You are going to make contact with a Captain Julian Gatton, head of the Italian Order. He should be waiting for you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. by the entrance to St. Peter's Basilica. There he'll give you further information on what your mission will be. In the meantime, the Order thanks you for your service, and as always, may God bless your efforts. The screen on the device darkened as the image faded away. I love the amateurs. They appeal to my inner geek, Claude joked, admiring the technology. And I love Deputy Chief Captain Manley. He's so manly, replied Nancy with a wistful smile. Claude rolls his eyes. Oh, please, how many times must you say this? Get some new material, he gestured, feigning boredom. Nancy laughed at his expression. All joking aside, since we'll now be making a trip to Rome instead of going back to HQ, we'll need to change our flights. Best we get there tonight. What do you think? Yes, you are right. But why Rome and why now? They don't have enough operatives there or what? Nancy picked up and unzipped another bag which had currency from different countries in a number of wallets, together with respective passports and other identification documents. Well, I have a hunch that that's where Adrian Faust is hiding out, Nancy said, locating the correct passports they would need. Faust! Claude's expression was more than slightly perturbed, and slowly he shook his head once more. Yeah, Faust. Nancy pulled out a set of American passports for them both. She handed one to Claude. If your hunch turns out to be right, what makes you think we would be any match for him? Perhaps not by ourselves alone, but at the very least we would be able to confirm his whereabouts after nearly 8.5 months of being underground, said Nancy. Listen, how do we know he wasn't the one behind last night's attack? We don't, but he could have ordered the hit from anywhere, and look at his strong connections to Rome. Mais oui, but as far as we know, he's not been in Italy for years. Well, he's not one to go down without a fight, I'll tell you that, said Claude, as he turned the coach into the A312 towards Heathrow Airport. And neither are we worried, Guts, Nancy teased. I am not so worried, Claude replied defensively. You so are. You are the biggest worry guts I've ever known. Look, I've no doubt the team in Rome have stumbled upon something, and they want us to help check it out. I don't think it'll be anything more serious than that. She put her bag down and then reclined the seat. I got a feeling Faust's going to let his guard down real soon, and the sooner we discover his whereabouts and rid the world of him, the safer we will be, she added resolutely. It was 7:20 that evening when Amelia, having rested at home for most of the day, and freshened up, selected a nice outfit in which to meet her mother before she started on her way to A.C. Boehm's restaurant. She quickly walked a short distance to the nearest number 57 bus stop, and within a minute of arriving there, a bus pulled up. Amelia showed her photocard and bus pass to the driver. You'll need to get one of them new Oyster cards come September, miss. Yes, I will, thanks. Amelia sat down towards the back, on the lower deck, and pressed play on her MP3 player. She sang along in her mind with Otis Redding's Dock of the Bay. The driver had no sooner closed the doors when he had to quickly reopen them in order to let another passenger on. Amelia looked towards the front and saw a tall black man who looked very familiar to her. He was bald with a distinctive scar on his forehead. He was wearing a brown leather jacket and blue jeans. Although there were plenty of seats available, the man chose to stand in the area usually occupied by wheelchair and pram users. He was holding onto the handrails and facing the door with the bus's right-hand windows behind him. Amelia closed her eyes as her mind raced with thoughts of where she had been in the recent past. No sooner had she thought it, in her mind's eye, she saw everything once again as if rewinding back through a film. In less than a minute, she could identify where she had seen him from the moment the coach drove away over 6 hours earlier to the present moment. The first time was when the girls were breaking out of the group hug. She saw him sitting outside a coffee shop, close to the bus station on Cromwell Road. 5 minutes later, she had crossed the road with Emily and Scarlett to catch a bus back to Hampton Wick. Several seconds after that, she had crossed the road, and he had also crossed the road behind them. Before going downstairs to get off the bus, and after leaving the girls, her subconsciousness had registered him again, reading a newspaper on a seat towards the back of the upper deck. And an hour after that, she was sure it was him strolling past her home in St. Catherine's Lane when she briefly glanced out of the living room window. Him being on the same bus as her again made that the 5th time seeing him, and she wanted to call the police, but unlike her peers, she did not have a phone. She remembered being advised by a visiting police officer at a primary school assembly that if anybody ever felt unsafe on a bus, they should try to alert the bus driver. The speed and accuracy of her recollection amazed her, but she did not have any time to dwell on it. There were a large number of people on the bus, and so she didn't feel like she was in any immediate danger. Why is this guy following me? Does he know about the Revelation Stone? Does he want to steal it? A stampede of thoughts about how she could get away charged through her brain. Every second felt like 10 minutes and her heart began to beat rapidly. She saw the bus was approaching the next stop on Upper Teddington Road, so Amelia decided her best chance laid were creating as much distance as she could between herself and her stalker. She pressed the bell to notify the bus driver that she planned to get off, but did not stand up until the driver opened the rear doors. Then she dashed to the exit and ran down the street towards Hampton Wick train station. Running as fast as she could, she vaulted over the railing where the pavement met the road, darted across and leaped over the other railing. Only at that moment did she steal a glance behind her. Just as she feared, the strange man was also running across the road in her direction. She mustered even greater speed and rushed into the train station, passing the paying booth, hopping over the barriers and then running out along a platform. "The train is about to depart. Please mind the doors. Stand clear of the closing doors." Amelia managed to jump into the carriage as the doors were closing, and she turned back to see the strange man had just arrived at the carriage next to hers, but the train was already pulling away from the platform. She rested her forehead on her hand, which was leaning on the window. "Oh no, he knows where I live," she said quietly, trying to catch her breath, trying to keep herself from panicking, but her voice was still loud enough for other commuters to hear. "Are you okay, young lady?" asked a concerned middle-aged Asian woman. Amelia managed a nervous smile at the lady and the other passengers who had seen her jump through the closing doors. I'm fine, thank you," Amelia lied, desperately trying to reassure herself. She walked through to the next carriage, where she noticed a digital notification above the entrance to the adjoining car read, "The next station is Kingston." She looked at her watch and knew she had 30 minutes to get to the restaurant, otherwise her mother would become apprehensive, something Amelia wanted to avoid. "Perfect. I'll just get off here and catch a taxi," she thought. "Mum won't be the wiser." She sat down briefly and opened her black leather handbag to check inside, and breathed a little sigh of relief when she saw the brown leather pull-string pouch which was a gift from her father. He had bought it for her many years earlier to keep her pocket money in, and when she got home, she found it was the perfect size for her Revelation Stone. Feeling that leaving it in her bag was not the safest place for it, she got up again and made her way to the nearest lavatory, walking back through the carriage she had originally been in. Several of the passengers stared at her as she walked back towards the toilet at the opposite end. Their stares caused Amelia to feel uncomfortable. Could they tell she was carrying a huge diamond, its value beyond price and its worth beyond comprehension? She slipped into the toilet cubicle, locked the door behind her, then removed the leather pull-string pouch from her bag and stowed it in the front right pocket of her jeans. Frowning at the unnatural bulge, she removed her denim jacket and tied the sleeves around her waist, which concealed the bulge. Upon arrival at Kingston Station, she got out of the cubicle and rushed off the train. The Asian lady had also got off the train behind Amelia, which unnerved Amelia all the more. "She's probably following me too," Amelia thought, shaking her head and looking straight on. "Gosh, when did I become so paranoid? I'm starting to be afraid of my own shadow." She sighed and wondered to herself. She continued to walk as fast as she could to the taxi stand, but unusual for that time of the evening, there were no taxis available, and the queue of commuters was long. Again, Amelia felt her heart rate increase, and although she thought it was probably safer to wait, she knew it was also the best way to be late for a meeting with Mary. So she decided, instead of waiting, to start walking up the road. She walked quite quickly. Then she remembered an alternative route which was quieter but much shorter than the one she'd usually taken. It was quickly approaching twilight, and the evening was overcast and the air heavy with humidity. Amelia could feel something in the atmosphere, an eerie darkness, and she quickened her pace. Up ahead, a group of 6 young men were standing around on the roadside, all dressed in grey and black tracksuit hoodies. 3 of them had dogs with leashes. Amelia could see that 2 of the dogs were bull mastiffs and the other one was a bull terrier. Amelia loved dogs and had never been nervous of any breed, but the closer she got, the more tension she felt coming from the dogs and the youths. She stopped in her tracks and turned back towards the taxi rank, already a distance away. The youths also decided to walk up towards her. Realizing that every second that passed she would have less chance of getting away, she picked up speed and started to run. The three that had their dogs on their leads released them, allowing the dogs to chase after her. Becoming very afraid, she ran with all her might back towards the train station, and in despair she glanced behind her to notice the dogs were running much faster than she was. Then, just as she thought her situation could not get any worse, her right ankle twisted on an uneven pavement slab, and she buckled before falling to her knees. Hearing and seeing the dogs bounding closer, preparing to attack, she resigned herself to her fate and held her face downwards towards the ground, covering her head with her arms. At that moment of the imminent attack, bracing for what she was certain would be a vicious onslaught, she heard the dog suddenly yelp and whimper. She opened her eyes and lifted her head just enough to see the same strange man who had been following her earlier, fighting with the three feral dogs. They were making every attempt to bite him, but he seemed so skilled in martial arts that they did not get anywhere near him. He kicked and punched at the dogs, but it was not until he threw to the ground what Amelia assumed was a stink bomb, a type of glass container. Having thrown it to the ground in front of the dogs, it smashed, instantly emitting a red mist that evaporated almost as soon as it appeared. The dogs all quietly fell to the ground, just in time for Garfield to turn his attention to the hooded youths who had arrived. They were brandishing knives and steel poles in their hands. Garfield laughed. "Yous want to end up like your dogs, dem?" The youth stared back angrily at him, not even responding to the subdued dogs. "I'll ask you one more time. Maybe you don't understand. Do yous want to end up like your dogs?" "We're gonna carve you up," said one of the youths with a large hunting blade. "Okay, let's see what me being carved up by you guys look like." Garfield mockingly encouraged the lads while assuming a boxer's defensive stance. The youths yelled as they rushed towards Garfield, who stepped aside and simultaneously disarmed one of them. Garfield also drew a hand pistol from his waist. Amelia watched in disbelief and screamed as Garfield opened fire, shooting each youth. One by one they fell, hitting the ground with thuds. She looked from them to Garfield to the dogs and knew she had witnessed a multiple killing. "Shh," Garfield said to her, and she stifled any further screams as Garfield knelt on the ground alongside each one of the victims to reposition them. He tucked their hands under the side of each of their faces, bent their right knees, and one by one carefully rolled the unresponsive young men partially on their sides and partially on their fronts. Their dogs, meanwhile, had rallied around and were sitting up, panting, all traces of aggression gone. Amelia could not see any bullet wounds or blood coming from any of the young men, as she had expected to. She tried standing, but was not sure if she could as her ankle felt quite sore. Garfield walked over to Amelia, who he noticed was still stunned and confused by what she had just witnessed. To her surprise, she did not feel in as much danger as before. He extended his hand to her. "Here, let me help you." She looked at his beckoning fingers and uncharacteristically took hold of his hand. He pulled her up in one swift move, and she winced as she put her weight down on the foot she had twisted. He bent to take a look. "May I?" he asked, preparing to roll up her right trouser leg. She nodded. "It's not swollen that badly," he reassured. "Maybe put a little ice on it later," he suggested. She bent down to readjust her trouser leg and checked her watch at the same time. It was 7:50 p.m. and she had to leave, but she also had questions she needed answering. He tickled behind the biggest bull mastiff's ear and patted on the head. "Hey, sweetie, no hard feelings, right?" The dog looked up at him, then lay back down again. Garfield laughed and walked away towards the station car park. Amelia found herself following after him, shaking her head incredulously. "Wait, are you just going to leave them there?" "Stay in the recovery position. Give them 5 minutes, they'll be fine. Just a little headache, that's all." Garfield concealed his weapon, reached into his trouser pocket and pulled out a set of car keys. The lights of a silver Ford Focus flashed as the car was unlocked. "You're meeting your mother at AC Bombs, right?" "Yes, but how did you—" "Just who are you and why are you following me?" Amelia stopped abruptly. He got into the car and looked at her perplexed expression and stance. Her hands were on her hips, and it was clear to him that he owed her an explanation. He took a deep breath before answering. "Come on, man. I'll explain while we're on the move. No point hanging round here." Amelia joined him. I'm one of your protectors. You could say bodyguard, he said almost reluctantly. Bodyguard? Why do I need a bodyguard, she asked. Though as soon as she did, she thought, well, I guess it all makes sense. With that thought in mind, she closed the door. Yeah, okay, I think I know, she said. Again, Amelia reflected on all the times she had been taught never to talk to strangers, or worse, never to accept a ride from them, and hardly believed the ease with which she opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. Put on your seatbelt, please, miss. He took a deep breath. The first thing you must understand is that the world as we know is coming to an end. I guess I was kind of told that last night. So where do you fit in? She looked at his profile as she focused on the road and just how aware he seemed to be of all the other road users around him. Let me guess, you're one of the good guys, right? She asked, already feeling calmer and more relaxed. They pulled up behind a short queue of traffic being held at a red light. Captain Garfield Kaplan at your service, young miss. Garfield extended his hand to formally shake Amelia's, and as she reached out to shake his proffered hand, she noticed the same octopus tattoo on the inside of his wrist, identical to Claude's and Nancy's. He noticed her expression change as she recognized the tattoo. I belong to an ancient and global secret society known as the Order of the Zemeterian Clerics, and our one purpose has always been to help prepare the world for the second coming of our Lord the Messiah. He released the handbrake and drove off. She listened as though hearing this type of information was the norm. Indeed, since meeting me, she was realizing her normality was really changing. The order was found 2 millennia ago by our Lord himself, and our commission has been handed down from one generation to the next until this present day. Garfield snatched a glance at Amelia and felt impressed at how intently she was listening to him without interruption. It left him in no doubt that she had met me and was in receipt of her revelation stone. I was given this post after a senior cleric, Captain Anton Chivers, and 19 members of his team were killed by the Slemevoid on the 7th of last month in central London, he sighed. No way, Amelia gasped as she looked at Garfield, remembering she had been on her way to the British Museum with her grandmother that very morning. I'm really sorry, she said sadly, suddenly choked up, feeling for the clerics and for all those whose lives had changed that day. They died honourably in the line of duty. Amelia was stunned at the news, particularly the revelation that she had always had a protection team around her. Garfield drove in silence for a moment before speaking again. Ever since then, it has been my mission to shadow and protect you. I am ready to lay down my life if necessary, to save yours. You understand me? Amelia nodded, tears in her eyes, hearing the sincerity in his words. In just a few moments, he had gained her trust and respect. She felt the pain he was feeling regarding his colleagues, and felt a connection to this Captain Garfield Kaplan that she was unable to explain. Miss, there is a terrible war coming, and you cannot underestimate just how important you are to the future of the entire Earth. He paused again, considering how much he could tell her at that point, but like Amelia, felt a curious connection to her, one that could be trusted. Following his instinct, he felt she would be able to handle more. He decided to continue further. I know this must be a lot for you to comprehend, but the Zemeterian Order have looked forward to your birth for over 2 millennia. As you discover your true calling and fulfill your life's mission, you will prove to be a vital contributor in the winding up scenes of this world. And these Slemevoids? How can you stand against them? She asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. The Slemevoid is your worst nightmare, Garfield replied grimly. They are spirit devils and can take possession of human beings and cause them to do anything they want them to do. They have been responsible for some of the most outrageous atrocities throughout the history of the Earth. For example, them bikers who tried to kill you last night, and those little youths I confronted just now. Even the dogs. The Slemevoid don't care who or what they possess. But if you fail to protect me, though, she asked solemnly, then another cleric will step up and take over. And what if your team fails to protect me? She wiped another tear. Miss, trust me, we won't fail. We've been protecting you since you were born, and that night was something special, Garfield said, meditatively, recalling the events. Your boat heralded one of the most legendary battles between the clerics and the evil Slemevoid. Amelia could see Garfield was going to enjoy telling his story. She was enjoying his company too, and was relieved she still had 8 minutes left before meeting her mother. Miss, where were you born? He asked, smiling. Kingston Hospital, she replied. All your life you've been led to believe that you were born in Kingston Hospital, and while that is not entirely wrong, you were not born in the maternity ward as those other little babies, but in a secure ward below ground. Wow! Amelia considered this to be a fascinating revelation. Does my mum know any of this? Nah, she don't know a thing. She just thought it was another part of the maternity unit. I was not there, but believe you me, legend has it that your birth was of such significance that it drew one of the largest gathering of the Slemevoid. Really? Yes, true. They were all determined to kill you before you did become a real threat to their plan and destroy the whole human race, because they know you will be the catalyst that will lead to their downfall. Well, I was told I have a mission, but oh my goodness, their downfall? Okay, she sighed, trying to take it all in. So how did the Order know that I would be so important even before I was born? It is because of your parents' ancestral lineage. My ancestral lineage? What do you mean? You ain't heard nothing yet. He was getting ready for the big reveal. Miss, you are descended from the great patriarch, Abraham, the man of faith itself. Well, I read some of the Bible, and I know God told him that he'd be the father of nations. True, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. Your family are direct descendants from the faithful man, and the clerics have been watching your bloodline for thousands of years. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. Genesis 22, verse 18. Garfield had a sound understanding of the scriptures and would often quote many verses verbatim. Abraham was one of the greatest guardians of the earth and your forefather. Wow, I can't believe it, explained Amelia, and used her hands to cover her face. The prophecy, his seed or posterity will be a blessing to the whole earth, is being fulfilled in my lifetime, added Garfield with great satisfaction. You're kidding, aren't you? She said, removing her hands from her face. You're trying to say that this verse was talking about me? She was absolutely astonished. That is precisely what I'm saying. The Order knows that the genealogy of Father Abraham led to Mary and Joseph, and I've been watching all of their descendants straight down to you, my dear. Amelia laughed loudly. Mary and Joseph? As in the Mary and Joseph? Yes, they both have a direct bloodline all the way to King David, through to Abraham and all the way back to Adam and Eve, our first parents, and you have a direct bloodline to them, said Garfield confidently. Well, of course, I mean, what other Mary and Joseph could you possibly be talking about? And well, I guess now you're going to tell me that I'm also a direct descendant of the Lord himself. Careful now, stopped Garfield. With all due respect for the good lad, there is no evidence that he ever got married or fathered any children. That's a shame, said Amelia glumly. All of a sudden, I'm a little disappointed. However, we know that our Lord had some brothers and sisters, by Joseph and Mary, and it is through his brother James' bloodline that you have come. And the Order knows everything about me? Everything, Garfield replied gleefully, including the fact that your mother is about to arrive at AC Boehm's any minute. I think you wouldn't like to be late. It was then that Amelia realized the car had pulled up outside the restaurant. I still have a lot more questions that I need you to answer, she said, looking intensely at him. Well, I believe you have been given the Revelation Stone just for that purpose, replied Garfield, nodding his head towards the bulge in her jeans pocket. Not knowing what to say, she opened the door and stepped out onto the pavement. And just how do I get the Revelation Stone to give me all the answers to my questions? She said, leaning into the open car door. I thought Gabriel would have told you that. Well, I guess if it's something for you to know, then you will know. Just think about it, touch the stone, and the answers will come, if they're meant to come. And what if I don't know what question to ask? Miss, the only question that should be in your mind right now is what you want to eat. And I can happily furnish you with the answer. Try the spinach and ricotta cannelloni. Trust me, I've never tasted better. Amelia looked at her watch and realized that she had arrived exactly on time, and Garfield sped off just as she closed the door. A black taxi pulled in nearby. When she looked into the back of the taxi, she saw Mary rummaging through her purse, trying to find her money to pay the driver. Having done so, she stepped out of the taxi and closed the door before realizing Amelia was standing behind her. Amy! Oh, I know it's only been one day, but I missed you so much, Mary said as she extended her arms to embrace Amelia. I've missed you too, Mum, Amelia said, feeling happy to be with her mother again, but emotionally reeling at the conversation she had just had from Garfield. She held on to Mary for longer than she intended to, taking in the smell of her mother's perfume. The normalcy of being with Mary suddenly made Amelia feel as if she had just woken up from a dream. That fire must have been so frightening, darling, Mary said, giving Amelia an extra squeeze before letting go. It was only a day, but I missed you so. She stepped back from her daughter and immediately noticed Amelia's complexion. Amelia Newman, are you wearing makeup? Mary asked incredulously. So, do you like my new look? Her daughter asked cheekily, unsure how to explain her healed skin. I was a bit older before I started wearing makeup myself, but you look amazing, darling. Then Mary's smile turned into a frown as she noticed the dirty patches on the knees of Amelia's jeans. What happened there? Oh, I twisted my ankle running from the train station and took a tumble, Amelia explained, endeavouring to wipe off whatever she could from her jeans. I'm fine, Mum, seriously. Maybe we could ask for some ice at the restaurant when we get inside, she suggested, repeating Garfield's advice to her. Good grief, Amelia, you really have been through the wars, haven't you? Amelia just smiled and raised her eyebrows at the ironic statement. Tell me about it, she smiled. Come on then, let's eat. I'm starving, and I want to hear all about the trip and this new look of yours, and don't miss out any details. Mary linked her arm through Amelia's, and they walked towards the restaurant. Amelia tightened her jacket round her waist and felt the stone below her jacket sleeves, and although she wanted to tell her mother everything, she felt she dared not. Well, I think I'm in the mood for linguine carbonara, Mary decided, having looked at the menu in the restaurant's window. How about you, darling? I'm going to go for the spinach and ricotta cannelloni, said Amelia, following her mother into the restaurant. It's been highly recommended,